All right, everyone, welcome to my lesson today. World War I, the causes and conditions for the Great War. I'm Mr. Adam Ahmed, and this lesson is covering Unit WH210A, which is part of the World History 2 Learning Standard for the state of Virginia. Real quick, I want to activate your background knowledge by playing a quick video.
What caused the devastating First World War? You may be aware of the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. This was, in fact, the trigger which set off the war from a number of underlying causes. These were militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Militarism created an arms race out of competition and fear of neighbouring nations. Germany tried to compete in a naval race with Britain, building more and more ships. Alliances were created to check the balance of power between nations. In 1882, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy formed the Triple Alliance. France, Britain, and Russia reacted in 1907 by creating the Triple Entente. Imperialism caused another type of competition and disagreement. The British and French empires made Germany jealous as it tried to colonize parts of Africa. Nationalism created the feeling that countries were better than others and promoted the anti-Austro-Hungarian sentiments in Serbia. 7 young Bosnian Serbs, who were part of the nationalist Black Hand, planned to assassinate Franz Ferdinand, heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary. Get your copy of Simple History, World War I, available on Amazon now. What caused the devastating First World War?
All right, so thank you very much for watching that video with me. I hope that it activated some of your background knowledge on the causes of World War I. So the acronym that we're going to use for this lesson to remember the causes is MAIN. And what that stands for is militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. So let's quickly go over what those 4 things are. So militarism. This is the policy of building up a strong military forces to prepare for war. It's the glorification of armed strength. It's also the two powers rule, which means having the military strength equal to the next 2 strongest powers. So that would mean, for instance, if I'm a country, I would try to have my military strength equal to both of you, the next 2 strongest powers. And militarism is also the fact that large militaries were necessary to control overseas colonies. If we remember from previous lessons, this period of time was when Europe was expanding internationally, and that was one of the great boons to their economic infrastructure in their country. So alliances. Countries use treaties in an effort to protect themselves from aggression. There's a couple key alliances that I want to talk about for this lesson. The first is the Triple Entente, also known as the Allies, and that consisted of England, France, Russia, Italy, but that was later once the war started, Serbia, Belgium, Greece, Romania, Montenegro, and Portugal. And then in 1917, as we'll get into, the United States joined the war and was also a member of the Allies. So the other side was the Central Powers, and that consisted of the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, as well as the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria. Originally, Italy was part of the Triple Alliance with the German Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but once the war started, they did switch sides. So imperialism, we talked about this a little bit in previous lessons. Imperialism is a system where one powerful nation occupies, controls, and exploits smaller nations. Several nations were imperial powers prior to World War One. As you can see on this map here, specifically dealing with Africa, the French controlled a large part of West Africa. Britain had colonies and territories throughout Africa, ranging all the way from Egypt down to South Africa, as well as colonies and territories in the western parts of Africa as well. The Spanish had an enclave in Morocco, Western Sahara, and you can see that Austro-Hungary and Germany didn't really have as much territory as the others. They were kind of late to the imperialism game. So what this meant was that imperial rivalry and competition for new territories and possessions fueled tension between major European nations and became a factor in the outbreak of war. And then we have nationalism. Nationalism was a prominent force in the early 20th century Europe and a significant cause of World War I. Nationalism is an intense form of patriotism or loyalty to one's country. Nationalists exaggerate the importance or virtues of their home country, placing its interests above those of other nations. And so here I have an activity. If you open up the slides that I shared with you prior to the lesson, you'll see two slides with your names on them, and I want you to answer the following questions. In your opinion, what was the most important influence in setting the stage for World War I? Was it nationalism, militarism, alliances, or imperialism? Please just briefly explain and tell me which one was second most important. So if you open up the slide deck and go to your respective slides, you can start typing in there and we'll see your answers. And once you're done, just let me know by typing into the chat pod in Google Meet to indicate to me that you're done. And if you're having any issues with those slides, let me know as well. Wonderful. And I will review those after this lesson. So we'll move on. I wanted to go over some notable Central Power figures. So we have Archduke Franz Ferdinand, and he was the Archduke of Austro-Hungary. And as you remember from the video and from your previous reading, he was assassinated in Sarajevo, helping to spark World War I in 1914. And then we have Kaiser Wilhelm II, the German Emperor and King of Prussia. And he was fixated to an extent on trying to expand Germany within Europe, in tandem with the Austro-Hungary Empire. He wanted to go in and expand parts of the Balkans, which I'll get into later as well. And then on the Allied side, we had Tsar Nicholas II, who was the ruler of Russia. as well as David Lloyd George, who was the Prime Minister of Great Britain at the time. So we haven't really touched upon the United States yet we know that the United States was active in World War I. So why did the United States join the war? Well, submarine warfare in the Atlantic kept tensions high, and Germany's sinking of the British ocean liner Lusitania in 1915 killed more than 120 citizens and provoked outrage in the United States. In 1917, Germany's attacks on American ships and its attempts to meddle in U.S.-Mexican relations finally drew the U.S. into the war on the side of the Allies. And in 1917, on April 6th, the United States declared war on Germany. But there was also another reason why the United States went into the war. The U.S. banks held large amounts of British debt and were helping to fund the British war effort. So we were sending supplies to Britain. Our ships were getting attacked by German boats in the Atlantic. And also, if Britain did end up losing the war, we would have, United States banks would have been worried about Britain's inability to pay back those debts. So to an extent, engaging in war was a financial factor for the United States because they would have lost out on a lot of money that they had loaned the British. So I want to just kind of get your opinion real quick. Should the United States have joined World War I? And you can unmute your microphones and I can just call on you if you'd like. So Vicky, real quick, do you think the United States should have joined World War I based on the information that you've learned?
Yes, I do think so. I think basically Germany's attacks on the U.S. ships prompted our entry into the war. So I agree that we should have joined the war.
Wonderful, thank you. And Stephanie, what are your thoughts?
Is there any feedback? Okay. I think that we kind of were stuck doing it, like you said.
Yeah. Well,
it was a terrible war, but
yeah, the Great War, one of the most deadly wars, unseen since that time. And with trench warfare, as we'll find out in the next lesson, it was devastating for Europe. But sometimes war is necessary, and that's one of the themes of this course is the notion of just war. So thank you so much, Stephanie. So we'll move on. Why did Russia leave World War I? Well, in 1917, there was the Bolshevik Revolution led by this man, Vladimir Lenin, and the Tsar Nicholas was deposed. So Lenin wanted to focus on his communist revolution in Russia and did not think that keeping Russia engaged in World War I was in his country's best interest. So in 1918, a few months after the Bolshevik Revolution, he signed the Brest-Litovsk Treaty with the Central Powers. So now is time for a quick pop quiz. At this time, if you could, I'm going to be putting a link in the box, and I'm going to be pulling up Kahoot. And once you click on the link, there will be a pin that will pop up. If you could please put that pin in your Kahoot, we'll then be able to begin the game. So put that pin in the link. So I see Steph there. And Vicky, whenever you're ready, we can go as well. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for playing that quiz with me. So now for the remainder of the class, I want you to fill out this exit ticket in the slide. So if you could go back to the slide deck and find the slide with your name on it, tell me one thing that you learned and one thing that you still have a question about. And Stephanie, great job with the quiz. Vicky, great job too. And we have just a couple minutes left, so fill out your exit tickets, and then when you're done, you can type done in the chat pod in Google Meet. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Vicky. And Stephanie, we're going to be wrapping up here in just a sec. Of course, if you do need additional time, you can fill it out at a later time and it will be counted. But thank you so much. At this time, we're going to end class. I really appreciate you joining my lesson, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.